Confused Matthew will now share his thoughts on The Lion King. Again.
Gonna do another review because the first one apparently wasn't controversial enough, and also I had to cut some things from the first one because of YouTube's 10-minute time limit at the time, so now I'll put it all back in and do the review I first wrote in its completion, and maybe revisit some points I made and see if they'd still hold up. I think a lot of them do. So now, without any further ado, here's another Lion King review. Oh, you can turn it off now. I'm not doing this anymore. I said I was going to sing the intro song, and I did, and it was fucking terrible, and I'm not singing this anymore. Turn it off. Just turn it off. Man, I can't believe it's been almost 7 years since I did that review. God! It seems like only yesterday I said, hey, this YouTube thing seems pretty fun, and hey, I got a wildly different opinion about a movie that everybody likes. I'll do a full review of that. There we go, that was fun, and I'm sure it'll be entertaining to the 5 people who actually watch this thing. Oh. This was one of the first reviews that I ever did, at a time where I didn't even know what Confused Matthew was going to be, or how I was going to do this going forward. And as I look back on the review now, there were a few head-scratching moments in there because of that. Like when I referenced Star Trek Generations and Star Trek First Contact, which really doesn't have much relevance today. At the time, I had planned on doing a thing where I would mention films that I was going to review next, or that I had reviewed in the past, in every video, but it didn't catch on, and so that's whatever, screw it. But the majority of the review is something that I'm still pretty pleased with today. I made every case I wanted to make. I'm pretty sure people liked the review. Wait, not like the other thing. And it's one of the few reviews I've done since that I'm completely satisfied with. So you're probably asking yourself by now, if you're so satisfied, why are you doing this again? Well, there are 2 reasons. First, while I covered all the major things that I wanted to address about the film, there was so much more I had to say, but at the time I was limited by a mere 10 minutes and I couldn't use any video footage, which severely limited how I could express my ideas. So it seems like a fun idea to include all those other things I wanted to say and how I wanted to say them. Secondly, I would wager that my original Lion King review has generated the most feedback and response of any review I have done before or since, and many people seem to want to know if any of that has changed my view on the film after so many years. So those are the 2 main reasons that I would like to do this again. A third, I suppose, is that after going back and watching it again, I realized that while I stand by everything I said in the review, there were some things that I could have articulated just a bit better, and the fact that I can now use video footage is going to be a big help, let me tell you. So this particular review will feature about half new content and critiques, and half revisiting of some of the older ones. So strap yourselves in as we jump down this rabbit hole once again. Now, the last time I did this, I started out pretty negative, but this time, I'd like to start things a little different, with the actual good things that I have to say about the film. And yes, there are a few. The truth is that most of the films I have reviewed as Confused Matthew are films that I sincerely no longer watch. They're just bad, and I have no desire to ever see them again. The Lion King, on the other hand, is one that I watch. I still don't think it's a good movie, but it has a lot of other qualities that are genuinely good. The animation is still the best I have ever seen of the hand-drawn style. The voice acting is good, although it leans just a little too heavily on star power. I mean, come on, guys. Give some professional voice actors a chance to act in a film for once. It's what they do. And the soundtrack is just incredible. Just incredible. Seriously, I've been rocking this soundtrack for the last 2 decades. As I get older, I don't even listen to Metallica anymore, but I still listen to this. And let me tell you, the opening sequence to this film, like everything leading up to the title, it's really just one of the best things Disney has ever done. It's just incredible. Still blows my mind. So while I can certainly say that I don't like this movie very much, I can't exactly admit to liking nothing about this one. And I have to admit that I don't hate watching this. There is so much artistry to the work that I am happy to sit down and spend a little bit of time with it every once in a while. But the biggest compliment that I wish to pay this film beforehand is this. Had I been around when the film was being produced, I would have taken one look at the screenplay and said, you guys are going to embarrass yourself. No one is going to be interested in this. They're all going to fall asleep. You're on the fast track to a flop, and I don't want anything to do with this movie. And you know who would have agreed with me? Walt Disney Studios. That's right, the creators of The Lion King did not have the full support of the studio at the time. All the suits at Disney thought the film was too different and too difficult to market to get people into the seats. They thought of this as being on the B list, and they didn't fully back the project at all. There was advertising to be sure, but they didn't give them the big media blitz that all their other films received. Disney basically said to them, this is never going to gross $1. Make it if you want to, but we're not going to spend that much time promoting it. We're focusing all of our attention and resources on Pocahontas. That's going to be our major hit. That is so funny to think about now. It's just like, oh, VHS? No. Betamax. That's where the future is. Ask your parents, kids. So this means that The Lion King's success, and it did turn out to be Disney's biggest success of the Renaissance era, is due to people simply seeing the film and recognizing it as a genuinely good film, without any hype or expectations at all. That's amazing. I think that's the way it should be with all films, especially in this day and age, so I'm sincerely happy for them. They proved Disney wrong. Hell, they proved me wrong, and that is a genuine accomplishment that all the confused Matthew reviews in the world cannot take away. But sadly, no matter how many good things I have to say about the aesthetic aspects of the film, I still don't think it's a good movie. I found this one to have so many story, theme, and character problems that I just didn't like it as a kid, and I still don't like it to this day for the same reasons. So now let's take another in-depth look at why I didn't like this one. Now, the last time I did this, I started with Simba waking his dad up in the nicest way possible. However, the film actually begins before that, and one of the biggest problems I originally had with the movie was also, sadly, something that I had to cut out of the first review. Namely, Scar. I touched a little bit on how everyone in the kingdom would have to be dirt stupid to believe anything that Scar was selling them, but there is just so much more wrong with how this was presented. Scar is the reason every other character in the film just comes off as stupid to me. To take the opening of the film, this is one of the only interactions between Mufasa and Scar, and I mean, just listen to this.
Don't turn your back on me, Scar.
Oh no, Mufasa. Perhaps you shouldn't turn your back on me.
Is that a challenge?
No, Mufasa, that was not a challenge. A challenge is something like this here.
Whoosh. Answer me, weakling. Experience this!
What Scar did there is what is known as a threat. And considering that you were standing there for his entire speech of dissent and backstabbing, it might behoove you to take appropriate precautions after this.
Well, I was first in line, until the little hairball was born.
You keep him very far away from my son. You hear me? Keep him far away!
You see, unlike most Disney villains, Scar isn't even trying to hide this. I mean, he's not even trying to mince his words. Of all the Disney villains of the Renaissance era, Scar is the most direct and obvious about his intentions, and yet everyone around him just acts completely oblivious to this. And please don't get me wrong, I understand that this is a children's film, and I understand that sometimes you just have to go with this stuff. If you look at it from too much of a technical standpoint, every animated character in every animated film on Earth probably could have proceeded with more logic and common sense than they actually did. But even then, the writers at least try to give a few good reasons why people aren't catching on to something, or why they're kept in the dark. I mean, even Jafar was trying to use subterfuge and acting like he's on the Sultan's side. At least they established that the Sultan was under a spell, that he wasn't really the sharpest pencil in the box to begin with, and, might I add, even after all that, Aladdin still figured out what he was obviously doing. These people have no excuse. Scar is saying that he feels jilted by Simba's birth. He's saying that he feels bitter about not being able to be king. He's saying that Mufasa shouldn't turn his back on him. I mean, he's saying these things to the characters.
Uncle Scar, when I'm king, what'll that make you?
A monkey's uncle.
Oh, Scar, the way you say those things. And yet, with all of this deliberate obviousness, everyone else goes about their business like they have no idea that he could possibly be up to something nefarious. When Scar does take over, it never occurs to anyone that there could be something fishy about it, and when it's revealed that he tricked them all, they act like this is the most surprising thing on Earth. Seriously, are you all fucking stupid? Not you, the audience, of course. I'm talking about the damn lions. This was the first time in a Disney film where I honestly felt the characters weren't catching on to an evil scheme simply because the screenplay didn't allow them to. It's obvious. I mean, it's so laughably obvious what Scar probably wants to do that it just boggles the mind. And yet even more mind-boggling is Scar's actual plan, which is really stupid, but we'll get to that later. So you know the drill, we jump ahead in time, Simba is a little kid, and he wakes his parents up in the nicest, most pleasant way possible. His father then takes him on a tour of the kingdom.
Everything you see exists together in a delicate balance. As king, you need to understand that balance and respect all the creatures.
But sometimes that just ain't enough to keep a man like me interested. Oh no, no way. No, I've gotta go out and have fun at someone else's expense. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm an asshole, yo, 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 yo. I'm an asshole, yo,
Can we all just agree that we know how I feel about Simba by now? I'm just gonna go ahead and say that we all know how I feel about Simba by now. I mean, the first thing the little shit does in the movie is headbutt his father in the face. Still gets on my fucking nerves to this day. And don't tell me this is just a little kid who got overexcited and woke his dad up because of it. That's bullshit. Nemo was a kid who got overexcited and woke his dad up because of it. And at the end of that scene, Nemo looked like this. Simba was an entitled little shit who demanded to be satisfied, and when his scene was over, he looked like this. I mean, look at that face. Look at that face. How can you not hate this face? So I'm assuming you've all seen the review, and so you know where I go from here. Simba acts like a little brat, lies to everyone, does everything he isn't supposed to do, and basically behaves like a little shit until his father gets killed. Now, here's one of the first revisiting parts of the review. As I said, there were a fair amount of objections from fans when I did this the first time, one of them being that my portrayal of Simba was just totally out of context. Simba didn't actually call anyone a dickface, he didn't actually sing "You guys suck and I am great," and all those parts of the review were largely dismissed as hyperbole. So, is this true? Am I just taking the character out of context and portraying him only as I saw him? No, I'm sorry, there is nothing out of context about this. I mean, I can understand why people could have said that when I had to dub all the lines myself and couldn't use any video footage, but now I can. And here is every single scene Simba was in.
You promised. But I thought a king can do whatever he wants.
Oh, there's more to being king than getting your way all the time.
There's more? Oh, Dad, can I come?
No, son.
I never get to go anywhere. My dad just showed me the whole kingdom. And I'm gonna rule it all.
Promise me you'll never visit that dreadful place.
No problem.
So where is this really cool place?
Oh. Around the water hole.
Not so long as I'm around.
Well, in that case, you're fired. Well, he's the future king. Yeah. So you have to do what I tell you.
Free to do it all my way. Everywhere you look, I'm standing in the spotlight.
I am a genius. Hey, genius, it was my idea. Yeah, but I pulled it off. Look, Banana Beak is scared.
Right now, we are all in very real danger.
Danger? Ha! I walk on the wild side. I laugh in the face of danger.
What? Simba, you no-good flea-bitten varmint! Ooh, I hate that lion!
Now, all of those scenes were condensed, of course, but the context is clear. You will note that not one scene or line of dialogue just played contains anything other than Simba doing one of three things: acting entitled, complaining when he doesn't get things his way, or boasting like a smug little shit. This is the one and only thing I mean when I say that I'm being objective. I'm not being particularly objective about how I feel about Simba. I think he's a little asshole. But what you were just shown is not coming from me. It's not coming from how I subjectively feel about the character. This is coming from the film. Nothing out of context, no subjective impositions.
I never get to go anywhere.
He never gets to go anywhere. He only just took you on a tour of the entire kingdom, you little shit! Now, there are two common arguments that people have made about this, sometimes even contradictorily at the same time. The first is that Simba is not an asshole, he's just a little kid. And the second is that Simba is an asshole, but that's okay because he's just a little kid. Kids are just like this. It's part of growing up, and all children act out and get into trouble every once in a while. My response is, yes, Simba is just a little kid. But so is this.
Well, did you know that you could perhaps kill somebody?
Yes, but I wanted to do hood rat stuff with my friend.
So is this.
I don't go to school and I kill people. Whatever, I do what I want.
So is this.
Leave her face. I like her pretty.
In fact, that one is just perfect. I compared Simba to Malfoy the first time around, but he is so much closer to Joffrey. It's just insane. Now, wait a minute. Now that I think about it, the Lannister symbol is a lion, and Simba is a lion, so... Oh my god. Oh my god, it all makes sense! It all makes sense! An entitled little shit who wanted the throne so he could have everything his way. That is Simba in a nutshell. I mean, some of Simba and Joffrey's dialogue are even downright identical.
But I thought a king can do whatever he wants.
The king can do as he likes.
But hey, I mean, you can't say anything bad about Joffrey, right? He's just a little kid. Little kids are like this, right? And I mean, both characters grew up with a privileged life, so that makes it even more okay. That's another excuse for Simba that I love, that it makes sense why he is the way he is because he's a product of royalty, and that usually causes behavior like this. As if that makes it any better. Yes, children of privilege often behave this way, and we have a word for those children too. We call them assholes. And yes, getting into trouble and exploring your boundaries is a part of growing up, but that doesn't mean it can't piss you off while it's happening. Usually in good stories, someone is disobeying their parents and getting into trouble for the purposes of something good. Like Ariel in The Little Mermaid. She knows she's not supposed to go near the human world, but there's another side to that. Triton was downright prejudiced against the human world, and Ariel's accepting of it was a good thing despite the fact that she was being disobedient. The only reason Simba was doing anything he did in the first act of the film was to bolster his own ego and impress everyone with how great he is. And I'm sorry, there's nothing heroic about that. There is nothing good about that. That's just someone being a little shit for no reason and giving us no reason to like him. And they didn't make Simba this way because they thought it would be realistic. They did it because they thought it would be cute. Because someone saw Jonathan Taylor Thomas's shitty character on shitty Home Improvement and said, hey, TGIF. Home Improvement actually wasn't TGIF, but you see what I'm saying. Kids love these smart alecky little brat characters, so just take that character, make him into a lion, and boom, instant laughs from the audience. But that's the problem. Cute is all they were thinking about in making Simba the character he was. No one was really thinking about what this implies about Simba as a person, or how it impacted the rest of the first act. There is simply nothing to like about this kid. Even if you're amused by him, what is there to care about other than that? But the last point that people usually bring up that I would like to address here is this. Simba isn't an asshole in any objective sense. Another fair assessment of him is that he's just a rambunctious little scamp. He may get on your nerves, but that's just you. Lots of people just think he's a lovable troublemaker, and that interpretation is no less valid than your own. And that's actually true. I have no idea how anyone can watch the clips I played earlier, or the movie for that matter, and not think Simba is an insufferable little brat bastard. But if you don't, I guess that is your own valid interpretation. But as I thought about that fact, I realized Simba being an asshole wasn't actually my biggest problem. My biggest problem is that Simba's struggle and conflict in the first act just seems so completely pointless and unrelated to the rest of the film, whether you think he's an asshole or not. I mean, look at what we have here. We have a shitty little brat, or spirited little scamp who wants to rule the kingdom selfishly, get his way all the time, have fun, and just do whatever he wants. Now, this is strikingly similar to another young ruler of a kingdom who just wanted to get his way all the time. Oh, what's his name? What's his name?
What's his name? Cusco!
Let me just stop the review right here and explain something. I love this movie. 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 And let me tell you, that actually surprised a hell of a lot of people when I revealed that, as most seem to guess that I would hate Cusco just as much as Simba because they're basically the same character. And it's true. They are. Hell, they even have the same lines every once in a while.
Well, in that case, you're fired.
Oh, and by the way, you're fired.
But you see, the reason I love The Emperor's New Groove is because it was actually about Cusco's transformation from the bratty, selfish, egotistical ruler to someone more compassionate and caring. Every step of his journey was a step closer to learning how to care and to empathize with people. Thus, it kind of became okay to enjoy him in his more selfish moments because you knew that it was all part of the learning process. And at the end of the film, we see him change from this to this. Cusco being the little shit that he was in the beginning was the conflict, and his reformation was the resolution. But that's not the case with The Lion King. It starts out with Simba being a brat, but then changes to something totally unrelated. We'll see how in a bit. So after Simba is shown the entire kingdom, he naturally gets pissed off because he didn't get to do one thing that he wanted to do, so he goes to complain about this to his uncle. Now, here is one of my favorite parts of the film, the moment where Scar proves my point better than I ever could. Just watch.
He didn't show you what's beyond that rise at the northern border.
Well, no. He said I can't go there.
And he's absolutely right. It's far too dangerous. Only the bravest lions go there.
Well, I'm brave.
An elephant graveyard is no place for a young prince. Oops.
An elephant what? Whoa.
Promise me you'll never visit that dreadful place.
No problem.
There you have it in a nutshell, folks. I mean, Scar wants Simba to go to the elephant graveyard, so knowing Simba very well at this point, he recognizes that the best way to get him to do this is to tell him not to go to the elephant graveyard. What's more, he plays into his ego, telling him that only the bravest lions go there. Simba will naturally try to impress people by proving how brave he is in going there. I mean, Scar's plan revolves around knowing precisely what a two-faced little shit Simba is. I mean, God! Okay, that's the last time I bring up Simba being an asshole. I promise. I still think he is, but just giving this movie every possible benefit of the doubt, I will now assume that he's nothing more than a spirited little scamp. So this spirited little scamp then lies to his mother's face and tells her that they want to go to the waterhole, and being a spirited little scamp, he then spiritedly brings a friend along to this dangerous and forbidden place, and spiritedly nearly gets 2 people killed. That's our Simba! But after that, we actually have a really good scene. I know I've praised this scene numerous times, but it really is just so good. Both these characters have a moment of bonding, and Simba actually learns something from his dad, something that could potentially make him grow as a character. The problem is, it doesn't really amount to much down the line, but again, we'll get to that later. Meanwhile, Scar is pissed off that the hyenas didn't succeed in killing the cubs, even though he made it so easy for them by playing to Simba's more spirited tendencies. Man, this whole benefit of the doubt thing is getting really backhanded, isn't it? Sorry. So he scolds the hyenas by telling them in song that he plans to use them to take over the kingdom, which is what he was already doing. So why do we need to watch this? I mean, the scene looks great and the song is fantastic on its own, especially with that seamlessly dubbed Jim Cummings part that no one spotted because Jim Cummings is freaking amazing. But what does this song tell us that we didn't already know? Oh, right, there is one thing. He's not just rallying 3 hyenas anymore, now we see him rallying all the hyenas and promising them food and land in exchange for following him.
Stick with me, and you'll never go hungry again!
Well, you don't need all of them, right? I mean, it was just the 3 hyenas that caused the stampede. The rest of them didn't do anything. You're going to give a zebra leg to 3 of the hyenas for killing 2 people, and now you're going to give an entire kingdom to all the hyenas for killing 2 people. Not really sure how this benefits you. Probably wouldn't have had that much of a problem ruling if you hadn't have done this, since there wouldn't have been so many mouths to feed. What is he, freaking stupid? He had an airtight plan that no one in the kingdom saw through. He could have taken the throne with no one questioning this, and he wouldn't have owed anyone. What did he need to bring the hyenas into this for? What could they possibly do for him other than make the food source scarce? I know he uses them as muscle against Simba later on, but that was happenstance. He thought Simba was dead. What was he using them for other than that? Seriously, I mean, is he freaking stupid? I already said that. Yes, he's stupid. It's the Lion King. Everyone is stupid. So cut to the next day where Simba is taken to a rock in the middle of nowhere, stampede ensues, daring rescue takes place, and Mufasa comes down with a really bad case of death. Last time around, I criticized this part of the movie heavily because Simba simply and unequivocally had nothing to do with Mufasa's death. There isn't even any way to spin it that way. Not even on the level of an 8-year-old. The movie doesn't even seem to know why Simba is supposed to have been responsible for this. Simba was on a rock when the stampede happened. Who put him on the rock? Scar. Simba even tried to get off the rock, but was kept there by Scar's insistence.
I'll go with you.
No. No. Just stay on this rock.
So, in what way does Simba think he was at fault here? The answer from most Lion King fans is, hey, what are you, stupid? Simba did a little roar, and he thought that that's what caused the stampede in the first place. So, you know, it was a freaking little war. What, are you freaking stupid? Scar told him to do that too.
Ooh, and just between us, you might want to work on that little roar of yours,
Oh, okay.
Moreover, Scar has no way on Earth of knowing if Simba did a little roar or not, so when it comes to Scar's plan, he has nothing to base blaming Simba on at all. Everything Simba did was something Scar told him to do. And I'm not even sure that that is what the writers were trying to get across in this scene. I mean, listen to this dialogue. Please tell me how this being Simba's fault is being communicated here.
Simba, what have you done?
There were wildebeest and he tried to save me. It was an accident. I didn't mean for it to happen.
Of course you didn't. No one ever means for these things to happen. But the king is dead. And if it weren't for you, he'd still be alive.
Yes, technically true, but how? I mean, are you going to give a reason, or are you just going to stick to this vague truism? The car blew over, and if it weren't for the wind, it would still be right side up. The statement is true, but it contains no useful information. I mean, this is his fault because, what? Just because he needed rescue? Huh? But as I look back on my original review, I've come to the conclusion that this is just a story and writing problem. But it's not, as I first said, a character problem. I blamed Simba directly for not catching on to this, but I no longer think that's reasonable. I've heard the arguments that Simba was in a state of great emotional grief and conflict, and that would be enough to make vulnerable even an adult, and it's true. I mean, look at The Little Mermaid as an example. Some people get on Ariel's case for trading her family and friends for a pair of legs, but I actually don't think she would have done that had she not just had a huge fight with her father, which threw her into a state of emotional rebellion. So by that logic, I am willing to concede that maybe I was expecting just a little too much from a child that just watched his father be trampled to death. So, there you go. Score 1 for the Lion King fans. And you know what? I'd even say that after Simba goes away and has some time to come to grips with his grief, he'll probably have a moment of introspection where he learns that he wasn't responsible for his father's death. And even if he was just a child, and maybe he should cut himself some slack. Hell, he'll probably even be a better man for the experience, and he can return to Pride Rock with his head held high, knowing that at the very least, this experience has helped him grow. At least that's what might have happened if it wasn't for these assholes! But before we get into all that, let's just take a break. Kinda threw my voice out on the whole Simba thing. Let's just take a break. Okay, before we get into the issue of my past and present feelings on Timon and Pumbaa, I want to talk about something else. I just have one question for the entire audience. What is the central conflict in this movie? As I understand it, it's the main character feeling responsible for his father's death and running away from his problems. The main character then must learn the lesson that rather than running from your past, you can simply learn from it and move forward a bit wiser than you were. So with that in mind, second question. What the fuck hell does any of that have to do with him running around and acting like an entitled little dick bastard for the first act of the movie? Oh, I'm sorry, running around like a cute little spirited scamp. No matter how many ways you slice it, nothing that happened in the first act of this film has anything to do with what the film is actually about. Seriously, let's break this down and look at everything that came before the stampede. Again, giving every benefit of the doubt. Simba was a cub that was trying to be brave like his father, but he didn't realize that being brave doesn't mean you go looking for trouble. Mufasa then teaches him that lesson, and now, thanks to his father's good advice, Simba can begin trying to add a little balance to his more impetuous tendencies. Great! Except, what does that have to do with anything else in the movie? That is a completely different conflict than Simba needing to learn to not run from his past, and it's a conflict that got resolved within the first hour of the film. I mean, it's done. The film is about something else now. The only relevant event to the actual movie was Mufasa's death and Simba's reaction to it. The actual conflict begins when Simba is older and refuses to take responsibility for his life. I believe I said something to this effect in the first review in what I believe was a state of mild displeasure. This character is the way he is for reasons totally unrelated to this character. If this character was going to be completely irrelevant to the last 2/3 of this film, why did we even need to watch the first third? Why didn't you just start the film right here? Yeah. That. Hyperbole aside, however, the point remains true, that the film really does begin here. This is where Simba starts the actual conflict that will actually be resolved at the end of the film. I mean, look at Frozen, a film that has been compared to The Lion King numerous times. Now, these films are so dissimilar and so obviously not the same film that I don't even feel like I need to explain why. I can't be everyone's personal common sense all the time. Sometimes you just have to use your own. The films are nothing alike, except for one general way. They both involve a character fleeing and then coming back. That's it. But in the case of Frozen, everything that happened to Elsa in her childhood absolutely carries through in all 3 acts. Her fear of her own powers and keeping herself isolated was the central conflict for her character's arc through the whole film. Seeing her as a child and watching her grow up with that chain around her neck was not only relevant to the story, it was downright indispensable. By contrast, nothing that we see Simba do or experience matters before the stampede. Just nothing. When Elsa runs away, she is running away from something that she's been hiding her whole life. But when Simba runs away, he's running away from something that just happened. There is nothing connecting Act 1 to Acts 2 and 3. So I ask again, why did we even need to watch any of this? So back at the kingdom, Scar is spinning his yarns by telling everyone that Mufasa and Simba both died. I guess nobody ever thought to go back to look for bodies to confirm this, and also there's Zazu, who was smacked across the wilderness by Scar, yet he never brings this up. I don't know, maybe he's just stupid and thought another bird flew into him, or maybe the conch on the head gave him some conveniently specific Bane bramage. But I think a more common sense explanation is that, once again, we have a clear case of duh. In any event, Scar is now in charge.
So it is with a heavy heart that I assume the throne. Yet out of the ashes of this tragedy, we shall rise to greet the dawning of a new era, in which lion and hyena come together in a great and glorious future.
That's the end of the movie, right? I mean, Scar won. He won. He took over the kingdom, brought it to ruin, made everyone's life miserable, and no matter when Simba comes back and makes things better, he can never remove all the years of suffering and misery they all had to endure. That's the villain winning. That's the conflict itself coming to fruition and beating out the good guy. Scar won. I don't even know if this counts as a point against the writers or a point for them, because I can't think of one other Disney film where the villain actually won. And the best the good guy can hope for now is maybe stopping him after the fact. I'm just gonna go ahead and make that a feather in their cap, because, jeez, the villain won? Jeez! So anyway, getting back to Timon and Pumbaa, finally. They both see poor Simba nearly being eaten alive, and they both immediately decide to help him. At least, Pumbaa immediately decides to help him. Timon immediately decides to be the two-faced, opportunistic dick bastard that he is.
Jeez, it's a lion! Run, Pumbaa, move it!
But he's so little.
He's gonna get bigger.
Maybe he'll be on our side.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Maybe he'll be... Hey, I've got it. What if he's on our side? You know, having a lion around might not be such a bad idea.
This part in particular is one part of the original review that people really want to know if I've changed my view on. And the answer is, sort of. I have changed my mind on one part of this duo. Pumbaa's alright. He has a good heart, and he actually is the reason that Simba is alive and well. Timon would just as soon have left him for dead. And in fairness, some of that can be forgiven. I mean, Timon actually does have a point. Simba is one of their natural predators. But the film just goes out of its way to remind you that the only reason Timon agreed to help this kid is so that he could use him. And it also goes out of its way to remind you that Timon really doesn't seem to care about him.
What'd you do, kid?
Something terrible, but I don't want to talk about it.
Good, we don't want to hear about it. See, I told you he'd come in handy. When the world turns its back on you, you turn your back on the world.
That's some heartwarming stuff right there, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you. Timon is simply one of the most poorly conceived characters I have ever witnessed on film. It's like they're trying to make him the self-serving louse character who also has a heart of gold, except they forgot to add the heart of gold part. All we see from this character is selfishness. When Simba is a child, when he's an adult, and even when Simba finds quote-unquote love. Hell, Pumbaa was actually happy when Simba found Nala, and it was Timon who changed the tune to how this was going to affect him. Even the voice of this character was just all wrong. I mean, Nathan Lane is a good voice actor, don't get me wrong, but it just adds to the problem of accepting this character as anything good. I mean, the character just sounds like some creep that you'd meet at a Greyhound station or something.
Psst. Hey kid, you want to buy a watch?
That doesn't look like a watch to me.
Oh, come on. Hakuna Matata, friend.
I think I hear my mom calling.
Buy some cocaine, you little shit.
Now, to be fair, they do throw in some... That was an actual picture of me when I was little, by the way. I mean, look at that handsome little devil. I gotta apologize for this, though. That was just horrifying. Like I said, they throw in some lines and conflicts to where you can infer that Timon cares about Simba. I suppose the fact that he feels like Nala was causing him to lose his friend does imply that he thinks of Simba as a friend, but even accepting that stretch, he's even selfish with his friends. And don't even get me started on Hakuna Matata. I actually do, because it's something I'd like to go into more depth on. Here is another question for you all. What is the moral of this story? To take responsibility and not to run from your past, right? Now here is another question. What is the antithesis of that moral?
Hakuna Matata, what a wonderful phrase.
I mean, I just don't get it. This statement and this song could not be more antithetical to what you're supposed to take away from the film. And yet it's a catchphrase and moral that people usually remember more than they remember the film's moral itself. Why? Why would you give the main character a bad moral philosophy, one that he carries with him for years, and then never have the movie correct that false moral? It makes no sense. Hakuna Matata is the reason Simba never went back and dealt with any of this. Ergo, Timon and Pumbaa are actually kind of responsible for the fact that Simba never went back and rescued these people. Granted, I don't know what would have happened if they hadn't taught him this. Maybe Simba would have wised up on his own and returned to Pride Rock. Maybe he would have gotten eaten to death by vultures. But one thing I am sure of, Simba would have had a much better chance of learning to take responsibility if his own parental figures hadn't taught him not to. And again, even giving every possible benefit of the doubt, even assuming the opposing view is correct, that these two taught him Hakuna Matata just to make him feel better and to help him not feel so down, that they don't know that he was a king who ran away and so are not somehow responsible for Simba never going back and taking responsibility for this, fine. But the fact still remains that the one thing they ever taught Simba in his life was the wrong thing. And even after it's revealed that their advice may have led to Simba never trying to save his kingdom, that advice never gets corrected. We never have words between Simba and Timon explaining that maybe he was wrong or at least going overboard with what he taught him. How it's okay to give yourself a break and relax every once in a while, but you also need to do what you have to do. No, Nala had to tell him that. It's like the writers have a good idea here, but they only remembered to include half of it. They made Simba feel responsible for his father's death, but forgot to explain why. They made Timon a louse with a heart of gold, and forgot to add the heart of gold. When I think of a louse character that has a good heart underneath, I think of Baloo in The Jungle Book. Bare Necessities was a song that was actually very similar in theme to Hakuna Matata, and Baloo had a similar role to Mowgli as Timon did to Simba. He took him under his wing and tried to raise him. But Baloo's more selfish and lazy qualities were balanced out by Bagheera's sensible, down-to-earth qualities. And after making a lot of irresponsible mistakes with Mowgli, Baloo actually learns to be more responsible in the end, and he learns to have a bit more moderation in his life. Timon learns none of that. He has no counterbalance. His only side character is Pumbaa, who is really too stupid to teach anyone anything, and Timon actually spends most of his time countermanding whatever Pumbaa has to say. The Lion King 1.5 actually did a better job of balancing Timon's character out than this movie did. There were scenes in that silly movie that had this whole other side to this character shine through. In fact, if you edited some of these scenes into this movie, it would just fix everything for me. Unfortunately, whatever that movie would have been is not what we ended up with here. They put in Hakuna Matata, but forgot to drive home the point that Hakuna Matata may be alright in some situations, but not in all of them. Yes, don't worry, be happy, but maybe there's a time where you actually do need to take responsibility, which, by the way, is the entire point of the film! No matter how many ways you slice it, and no matter how much benefit of the doubt is given, this is just sloppy writing. So back at Pride Rock, Scar is kind of laying around, not much happening. Oh, except for the fact that he's being pestered by the hyenas for food.
We got a bone to pick with you. I'll handle this. Scar, there's no food, no water. Yeah, it's dinner time, and we ain't got no stinking entrees.
It's the lioness's job to do the hunting.
You know, this whole being king thing seems like it's just one big pain in the ass for Scar. Everyone's asking him for things, nobody's happy, Scar has to be starving himself. It almost begs the question of why he wants this place anymore. Just keep that in the back of your mind as we go along. So anyway, back at Fuck It Lagoon, Simba, Pumbaa, and Asshole are hanging out and swapping stories about what they think the stars are. I got on their case the last time for basically laughing in Simba's face over what he thinks they are, but as I look at the scene now, I don't know, you be the judge.
Somebody once told me that the great kings of the past are up there, watching over us.
You mean a bunch of royal dead guys are watching us? Who told you something like that?
Yeah.
What mook made that up? Oh!
Yeah, pretty dumb, huh?
I mean, he was kind of laughing with them and giving them the impression that this was a silly idea that it was okay to laugh at, so I don't know, it wasn't really as bad as I was making it out the first time, whatever, I suck. Speaking of fuck me, I also complained about Rafiki knowing that Simba was alive, where he was, and how to get there simply by looking at a turtle shell, but I don't really know where all that was coming from either. That's pretty par for the course in an animated story like this. I mean, Gaston sure seemed to know everything there was to know about the beast, where the castle was, and how to get there just by looking in a mirror for a few seconds, so really, this is no big deal. I completely deny that all I do is nitpick on the show, but those really were just nitpicks on my part. So anyway, we're then introduced to Nala, and by the magic of nothing, these two fall in love. I really don't have much else to say about this one. Nala is a blank character, and their relationship is superficial at best. It's a love story that isn't particularly loving, nor is it that much of a story. She shows up, and boom. Some have commented, however, that this is helped by Can You Feel the Love Tonight? That the job of a good soundtrack is to sometimes make you believe in something even when it's not all that believable by itself. And I'll grant you that, it's a very good song that does bolster the scene at the very least. But other than that, this relationship is absolutely nothing to speak of, and I actually haven't heard too many defenses of the Simba-Nala relationship. The only thing I have heard over and over again is that these two supposedly have chemistry and fall in love because they grew up together. Which is untrue. These two did not grow up together. They were just kids together. They grew up apart. I mean, if I ever ran into little Sarah Conway that I knew in first grade today, I'd be like, who are you? Who are you again? Anyway, so Nala has some words to Simba about how he needs to go back and help everyone whose lives were destroyed after Scar won. And to reinforce this, she tells him one thing that actually exemplifies what the point of this conflict is.
Hakuna Matata. It's something I learned out here. Look, sometimes bad things happen.
Simba!
And there's nothing you can do about it. So why worry?
Because it's your responsibility!
Exactly. See, now if Timon were somehow a part of this conversation and actually learned something from Nala's words, then maybe we'd have... Alright, I feel like I'm repeating myself again. People are always accusing me of doing that in my reviews, but I don't think I repeat myself. I really don't think I repeat. I don't think I do. I don't think I do that. I don't think I do. But unfortunately, Nala's words aren't enough to bring Simba around, so the mystic monkey tries taking a stab at it. We get a lot of generalized platitudes and fortune cookie advice from this guy, and then a scene that's just awesome as far as the atmosphere goes. I'm serious, check this out.
He's alive, and I'll show him to you. You follow old Rafiki, he knows the way. Come on.
I mean, seriously, I didn't even care where they're going. I didn't even care what they're gonna find when they get there. This scene is just riveting in itself. I mean, man, this is a good soundtrack. But then Simba gets to the spot, gets the lesson that his father is alive inside of him, and then we get the thing. The thing that turns this movie from just being a problematic film with character problems, false conflicts, and a confused moral message, to just being downright broken. Mufasa appears to Simba in the sky, and here is what he says to him.
Simba, you have forgotten me.
No. How could I?
You have forgotten who you are, and so forgotten me. You must take your place in the circle of life.
How can I go back? I'm not who I used to be.
Remember who you are. You are my son, and the one true king.
See, this is why the first act of the film was so completely pointless. Those words just don't mean anything in the context of what we've seen. Remember who you are? Who is that supposed to be referring to? Let me give you an example of what my problem is here. Now, please, don't take this to mean that I'm arguing that the following film is somehow better than The Lion King. I'm not making any comparisons of quality here. This is just an example. The Lorax, I can feel you accusing me of calling this movie better, now just stop it! The Lorax, the crappy film version anyway, is the story of the Onceler trying to sell his thneed, but in doing so he cuts down a truffula tree which his friends protest, so he vows never to cut down the trees again and to do all of this honestly. Eventually his thneed is a hit, and his nefarious family comes to take over the operation, eventually convincing him that they need to cut down the trees in order to increase production, to which the Onceler responds,
I guess it couldn't hurt to chop down a few trees.
But after cutting down those few trees, the exceptions turn into the rule, and we see the Onceler transform from a good, honest man to one consumed with greed, giving no thought to the promises he breaks or the lives he destroys. And finally, the Lorax comes to confront him on this, and we have this exchange.
I need you to get out, now!
Why? Do I make you uncomfortable? Remind you of the promises you made? The man you used to be?
See, when the Lorax mentions the man he used to be, we have something to compare that to, because for the first half of this film, we saw the good-natured, kind of goofy, but still good-hearted man that the Onceler was. And that stands in total contrast to who he is now, so this statement makes total sense. But the person we knew Simba to be before he ran away from the kingdom is when he was a little kid. So when Mufasa says, remember who you are, all we have as a reference is when Simba was a little kid, getting into trouble and wanting to have everything his way. Is that what he's supposed to remember? Huh? I really think this movie would have benefited from starting later in this character's life. Simba should have been introduced as a young adult, maybe a little prideful, but someone who also wanted to rule the kingdom well and do right by his father, a character of nobility and justice who would lead Pride Rock into a golden age. If that had been the case, then Remember Who You Are would have yielded immediate context and meaning for us. That is who Simba lost, and that's who he needs to find again. Not a rambunctious little kid, someone who was on the fast track to being a great king, but who no longer believes in himself. That would have tied the first act perfectly into Acts 2 and 3, and it honestly would have been pretty fulfilling. But making the first act about something totally unrelated to the central conflict we have here absolutely removes any relevance to this scene at all. But even aside from that, the scene is just so stupid. I mean, Ghost Mufasa gives Simba the same fortune cookie wisdom and platitudes that the monkey gave him. And call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure there was something far, far more relevant that he could have told him here.
Simba, remember who you are. Oh, and also you didn't have anything to do with my death. Scar had me over a cliff and was all like, "Long live the king," and he threw me off. You didn't start the stampede, you certainly didn't throw me off a cliff. So basically you've been hanging out with these two assholes your whole life for no reason. So, Go be the king, I guess. Yeah, I probably should have opened with this information rather than that far less useful statement, remember who you are. You didn't do anything. That's what I should have said. You didn't do anything. Sorry, I've been dead for a while. It affects my brain functioning sometimes. Alright, I gotta bounce. Peace.
But instead, he leaves Simba to run off armed with nothing but doubt over something Mufasa could have cleared up for him on the spot. And all of his supposed friends come to help.
Well, Simba, if it's important to you, we're with you to the end.
Huh. I guess you saying that at the last minute makes it true, huh? I mean, come on, movie, please. You've been giving me nothing but problems from the start. Please, just do something I like.
What do you want me to do, dress and drag and do the hula? Wow! If you're hungry for a hunk of fat and juicy meat, eat my buddy Pumbaa here because he has a treat. Coming down a dime, on a Stacy's swine, all you have to do is get in line. Ah, you aching?
Yup.
For some bacon?
Yup.
He's a big pig.
Yup.
You can be a big pig too.
Okay, that was good. I'll give him that. That was funny. So Simba makes it to the main rock where Scar is abusing women in front of everyone, and yet no one makes an attempt to help. Simba steps up, is mistaken for Mufasa for a bit, and then everyone realizes it's him. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never, and I mean never, seen a jig that was more up than the jig is up right here. I mean, that's it. Scar's lies are exposed. Simba is alive. Everything he told these people about Simba being killed in a stampede is now seen to be a deceit. I didn't even know where the hell they were planning on going with this after that. There's no need for heroes versus villains here. No need for any more plan thwarting. It's done. Simba's alive. Everyone can see Scar's lies now. But of course not. Nobody holds Scar's feet to the fire. No one questions him about what actually happened that day. They all just hang back and let him talk. And when he spews even more transparent lies that don't make any sense, they're still freaking buying this.
Tell them who is responsible for Mufasa's death.
I am.
It's not true. Tell me it's not true.
It's true.
You see, he admits it. Murderer! If it weren't for you, Mufasa would still be alive. It's your fault he's dead. Do you deny it?
No.
Then you're guilty.
Boy, oh boy, with that specific and airtight logic, it's no wonder nobody is calling him out or questioning him on any of this. Hey, morons! Fucking morons! He told you specifically that both Mufasa and Simba were dead. Now he's telling you that Simba is alive and was responsible for Mufasa being dead in the first place. Does this not raise a few questions? Like, maybe, I don't know, just a few?
You see, he admits it. Murderer!
No, it was an accident.
How?
If it weren't for you, Mufasa would still be alive. It's your fault
But-
he's dead.
but
Do
how,
you deny
though?
it?
No.
Then you're guilty.
No, I'm not a murderer.
Did he bite him? But no, everyone just accepts everything Scar continues to lie about well past the time his lies have already been exposed. Because the film needs these people to be stupid so that it can continue to be on. And you know, the crappy thing is that for all of this film's faults, I actually kind of felt like I understood Scar as a person up to this point. He wanted power, he felt he was cheated out of it, and he took steps to claim what he believed was his by right. But now, I just don't understand him at all. He got power and it sucked. Everyone's always pestering him for things, there's no food or water, so what exactly is he even protecting anymore? If I were Scar, I would have said, Simba, oh, thank God you're alive. This whole king thing was way more of a pain in the ass than I thought it was going to be. You want to be king? You can freaking have it. Please, please take this stupid place off my hands for me. And I know that Scar wants to believe he's a great king. I know he wants to believe that he's a better king than his brother was, and when a lie that big grows in your heart, you'll do anything you can to defend it. Sure. But this is too much. Now he's trying to keep a hold on this place just because he's the villain, and that's what villains do. So Simba is over a cliff, and Scar finally tells him the truth, due to him wanting Simba having some kind of ironic twist death, because that's also what villains do.
And here's my little secret. I killed Mufasa. No! Murderer!
I don't get this. I just don't get what the conflict and resolution of this movie is supposed to be anymore. Just please bear with me and try to follow me on this. Again, the central conflict in this movie is that Simba feels responsible for his father's death and learns that he needs to accept his mistakes and move forward with his life, correct? So if all Simba learns when he comes back is that he wasn't responsible for his father's death and doesn't need to accept and move on from anything, then what's the point of any of this? Part of the moral of this story was supposed to be that even when bad things happen, you shouldn't run from them. Face it and take responsibility. So what's the moral now? Even when bad things happen, you shouldn't run from it because maybe, just maybe, it will turn out you never had anything to run for in the first place because you were just being tricked? I'm sorry, this is a huge flaw in the very core of the film's moral. You can't have the moral be to face your problems, no matter how horrible they are, and then turn around and say that the problem was just a lie to begin with. You learn nothing from that. It was all just a trick. And once again, there actually was a way to fix this. It would have been horrible, but there would have been a way. This is going to sound bad, but imagine if Mufasa didn't die in the stampede. Imagine if instead he died saving Simba from the hyenas. That would have hit this message home, because in that case, Simba really does have a hard truth that he's been running from his whole life, and he actually does have a very real part of his past that he needs to face. But this is just trickery being unmasked. There's nothing for Simba to face here. He just foiled a plot a la yanking a mask off a Scooby-Doo villain. Who cares? The conflict was false to begin with. So after a bit of action, Simba and Scar have their final showdown. And for all that the ending is pretty much meaningless for almost all parties, we actually do have one moment that is quite poignant, where Simba uses Scar's own words against him in a very satisfying way.
Run. Run away, Scar, and never return.
Or go on, if you were thinking that the worst is yet to come. Why am I the one always packing up my stuff?
Okay, no, hold on. You just ruined it. What are you guys doing? Even if you believe that Scar fighting for this barren wasteland in the first place was understandable, even if you want to argue that he was defending his own delusional ego at that point, fine. But I think you would have to agree that this is just pushing the character too far into bullshit. He admitted in front of everyone that he killed Mufasa. He has an uprising on his hands. If Scar thought controlling the kingdom was hard before, it's just impossible now. What the hell is he fighting for at this point, other than just giving us a satisfying action climax? And just the notion that Scar would ever get into a physical altercation at all completely betrays what we know about this character. Let's not forget what he told Mufasa after his oh-so-subtle challenge.
Temper. I wouldn't dream of challenging you.
Pity. Why not?
Well, as far as brains go, I got the lion's share, but when it comes to brute strength, I'm afraid I'm at the shallow end of the gene pool.
Aha, you see? The reaction to that line by the other characters may have been stupid, but the line was not. This line was very deliberately and very strategically placed in the film in order to answer what the writers knew the audience would be asking themselves. If Scar wants the kingdom so badly, why doesn't he just challenge Mufasa for it? Before the audience even has a chance to ask, they answered this. It's because Scar knows he doesn't have a chance in a physical fight. That's why he had to use underhanded tactics in the first place. So why, I repeat, why would he ever start a fight that he knows he has no chance of winning? Especially after all of his lies were exposed and he has no chance of holding the kingdom anymore. And if he was gonna do this, why didn't he just fight Mufasa for the throne? It makes no sense. But eventually the hyenas take care of him and scurry off. Simba takes his place as king after so many false conflicts and contradictory moral dilemmas, and now everyone in the kingdom is probably going to need buttloads of therapy after everything Scar put them through after he won. But Simba made the sun come out, so yay. Like I said, the film isn't altogether worthless, and I'll admit that even after everything I just said about the piece, I honestly don't hate watching this. It's got some great atmosphere most of the time, the balance between comedy and tragedy is expertly paced, and there are a few nice moments here and there. But at its core, the film is just so backwards, so thin, and just downright stupid most of the time. Just about everything in the film either contradicts or misses the point of what the moral is supposed to be, and that's when what we're watching has any point at all. The characters are underdeveloped, usually awful, and just plain idiotic most of the time. Good on the paper of aesthetics, but quite bad in the practice of actually writing a film. So with all of that said, again, I hope I was able to better articulate why I feel this is the case. And even if I wasn't, I hope you found this revisiting to be at least somewhat interesting. I mean, hey, we'll always have Timon dressing and dragon doing the hula. Am I right? Am I right? Is that right? It's not right, is it? Oh well, I tried. The end. Seriously this time.
James Earl Jones. What a difficult impression indeed. I can't seem to decide if he has any sort of accent. I seem to be doing some sort of pseudo-English. I suppose all you need to do is be extra articulate, extra dark, and extra low.
Would help if I had a low voice, but I really don't.